of the Wizard's Weed by Juniper Vine Crowsinger. There sits a little girl with pale snowy skin, a nose of red, and eyes so big and blue. She lays under white cotton covers with a distinct sickness in her face. Looking up from her bed, she sees her grandfather who walks in the room, leading with a cane. She demands, "Tell me a magical story, Pappy." "What kind of magical story?" he responded and smiled. "Rated kittens for extra adorableness," she stated as she grabbed her stuffed kitten doll. He thinks while he hangs his coat by the door. He pushes a chair closer to her bed. "One day, there was this magical magician." The grandfather raised his hands with his fingers pointing out. "And he cried every night for his sweetheart, who one day fell asleep and could not wake up. The magician sought help from his peers of the other magical magicians. He begged, 'Brothers, I need your help. My love has fallen ill.' He called to each and every one of the magicians, but vain in their work, they would push him out of their home. So, alone, the magician walks down the main road to the kingdom. The blue-robed magician follows the cobble fence to the very end, where he spots a small, withering flower. It's dropping his petals as he takes steps. He notices a small whimper from the flower, so he asked it, 'Why, little flower, are your petals falling out?' The flower perked up and responded, 'Because no one thinks I am beautiful enough. Because I do not have bright colors. They think I am but a weed.' The magician looked deeply at the flower's petals, and he inspected it. 'Bullshit!' he shouted. 'You are a gorgeous specimen. By the fine arts, you are the Magicia Flatorius, the finest flower of all the magical fields. I shall take you to my house, where you can be planted in the finest soils and drink the purest waters. How does that sound?' Sitting in her bed, the little girl nibbles at her gingerbread cookie with such excitement in her eyes, and the grandfather chuckles. The flower raises with interest and shook its little head, loosening even more petals. The magician uprooted the flower gently and took it to his home. Between the small trees, at the end of a small creek, the magician walked near a mound of raised land, near a wooden-framed brick house. Gently planted the plant in enchanted soils. Then he sprayed fresh spring water. The flower thanked the magician. 'Thank you, kind sir. You are the only one to see me out there on that road. I have been trampled by many, and I could not take it any more. My strength was diminished, and my hope was lost. Thank you, kind sir.' The magician smiled and touched the small, budding, frail leaf, and in a moment, everything became white, and he stood in a valley full of golden trees and shining, swaying grass. A voice speaks to him. 'You, kind man, by your generosity and kindness, by not being of sin and vanity, you shall get what you wish. The most wanted treasure.' And like that, in a light, everything was black. He came to, next to the flower, which is still in its current poor state. He hears a loud noise from within his home. He goes to the shed and picks up a pitchfork and enters the house. He sees a beautiful woman standing there, looking at her hands in amazement. Her hands tremble at the touch of her face. She turns back to the wizard and her golden and white hair followed, flowing and glistening from the small beams of light running through the cracks of the ceiling. He drops the pitchfork, and a tear drops from his face. "My love," he gently cried out. The end. The grandfather said abruptly, smacking his lips. The little girl, confused. "What happened to the flower?" she asked with tears in her eyes. Well, the flower withered away and disappeared from the spot in which it was planted, though 3 golden seeds were left at the mound. The little girl looks at him in confusion. Old man continues. Sometimes there are things in our life that stands in our way, preventing us from going somewhere or doing things, like challenges and hardships. But some other times, there are blessings and situations where we cannot come to define what is to be a miracle. The grandfather gets up with his hand on his back and the other on his cane. He gently grunts. It's the purity and the truth within ourselves that gives us hope of good fortune on our bad days and wellness on our sick days. He looks at her and he sees the tubes coming from her chest into an ivy bag by her bed. He pulls out a pen from his pocket and writes on the bag, Magicia. Though a bit of magic never does any harm. They both chuckle with smiling eyes, and the grandfather walks out with his cane. He grabs his blue coat and turns back to the girl and winks. The girl smiles and finishes off the rest of her gingerbread man. Then she turns to the window, and there she notices 3 small flower pots with 3 small golden stems.